Class 10 Political Science Chapter 1 Power Sharing Introduction. In class 9, you have studied that in a democracy, all power does not rest with any one organ of the government. An intelligent sharing of power among the legislature, executive, and judiciary is very important for the design of democracy. In this chapter, the idea of power sharing is explained in detail, drawing parallels between the stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka. Also, you will learn the different forms of power sharing. The story of Belgium. Belgium is a small country in Europe, smaller in area than the state of Haryana. It has borders with France, the Netherlands, Germany, and Luxembourg. It has a population of a little over 1 crore, about half the population of Haryana. The ethnic composition of Belgium is very complex. Of the country's total population, 59% lives in Flemish region and speaks Dutch language. Another 40% live in Wallonia region and speak French language. 1% of the Belgians speak German language. In the capital city, Brussels, 80% people speak French, while 20% are Dutch speaking. The minority French speaking community was rich and powerful, so they got the benefit of economic development and education. This created the tension between Dutch and French speaking people in Belgium. Tension between Dutch speaking and French speaking communities. The minority French speaking community was rich and powerful, as I already said. So, they got the benefit of economic development and education. This was the reason for the creation of tension between these two ethnic groups, Dutch speaking and French speaking communities, during 1950s and 1960s. The tension between the two communities was more acute in Brussels. Brussels presented a special problem. The Dutch speaking people constituted a majority in the country, but a minority in the capital. This was the reason for the acute problem between the two communities in Brussels. Accommodation in Belgium. In Belgium, the government handled the community difference very well between 1970 and 1993. Belgian leaders amended their constitution four times and came with a new model to run the government. Here are some of the elements of Belgian model. The constitution prescribes that the number of Dutch and French speaking ministers shall be equal in the central government. Some special laws require the support of the majority of members from each linguistic group. Thus, no single community can make decisions unilaterally. The state governments are not subordinate to the central government. Next, Brussels as a separate government in which both communities have equal representation. Apart from the central and the state government, there is a third kind of government. Thus, community government is elected by people belonging to one language community, either Dutch, French, or German speaking, no matter where they live. This government has the power regarding cultural, educational, and language related issues. The Belgium model was very complicated, but it helped to avoid civic strife between the two major communities. The story of Sri Lanka. Let us compare the story of Belgium situation with another country to the Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an island nation just a few kilometers off the southern coast of Tamil Nadu. It has about 2 crore people, about same as in Haryana, like other nations in South Asia region. Sri Lanka is a diverse population. The major social groups are the Sinhala speakers. They were about 74%, and Tamil speakers were about 18%. Among Tamils, there are two subgroups. Tamil natives of the country, they were called as Sri Lankan Tamils. They were about 13%. Remaining 5% of Tamil were uh, had their origin from India, so they were called as Indian Tamils. So 7% of the population was comprised the Christian religion, 7% of the population, it's Christians. As you can see from the map, Sri Lankan Tamils are concentrated in the north and east of the country. Most of the Sinhala speaking people are Buddhist, while most of the Tamils are Hindus or Muslims. There are about 7% Christians who are both Tamil and Sinhala speakers. In Sri Lanka, the Sinhala community enjoyed the bigger majority and imposed its will on the entire country. Let's check Sinhala's domination over Tamil minorities. Majoritarianism in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka emerged as an independent country in 1948. The Sinhala community was in the majority, so they had formed the government. They also followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala. These measures taken by the government gradually increased the feeling of alienation among the Sri Lankan Tamils. Sri Lankan Tamils felt that constitution and government policies denied them equal political rights, discriminated against them in getting jobs and other opportunities, and ignored their interests. Due to this, the relationship between the Sinhala and Tamil communities become poor. Sri Lankan Tamils launched parties and struggles for the recognition of Tamil as an official language, for regional autonomy and equality of opportunities in securing education and jobs. But their demand was repeatedly denied by the government. The distrust between the two communities turned into widespread conflict and turned into a civil war. As a result, thousands of people of both the communities have been killed. Many families were forced to leave the country as refugees, and many more lost their livelihoods. The civil war ended in 2009 and caused a terrible setback to the social, cultural, and economic life of the people of the country. What have you learned from the stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka? Let's analyze this question. Both countries are democracies, but they dealt differently with the concept of power sharing. In Belgium, the leaders have realized that the unity of the country is possible only by respecting the feelings of people and interests of different communities and regions. This resulted in mutually acceptable arrangements for sharing power. Sri Lanka shows that if a majority community wants to force its dominance over others and refuses to share power, it can undermine the unity of the country. Why is power sharing desirable? You will find the answer to this question in the following points. Power sharing is good because it helps to reduce the possibility of conflict between social groups. And second reason is that a democratic rule involves sharing power with those affected by its exercise and who have to live with its effects. People have a right to be consulted on how they are to be governed. Let us call the first set of reasons as prudential and the second as moral. The prudential reasons stress that power sharing will bring out better outcomes, whereas the moral reasons emphasizes the act of power sharing as valuable. Let's look into form of power sharing. Most of you must think that sharing power is equal to dividing power is equal to weakening the country. A similar thing was believed in the past. It was assumed that all the power of a government must reside in one person or group of persons located at one place. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to make quick decisions and to enforce them. But these notions have changed with the emergence of democracy. Wrong notion it was believed in the past. But in democracy, everyone has a voice in the shaping of public policies. Therefore, in a democratic country, political power should be distributed among citizens. In modern democracies, power sharing can take many forms, as mentioned below. Number one, power is shared among different organs of government, such as legislature, executive, and judiciary, which we can call as horizontal division of power. This is called horizontal distribution of power because it allows different organs of government placed at the same level to exercise different powers. Such separation ensures that none of the organs can exercise unlimited power. Each organ checks the others This arrangement is called a system of checks and balances. Number two, power can be shared among governments at different levels, which is denoted as vertical division of power, like union government at the top of the hierarchy, followed by state government, and at the bottom, local government. Let's look into the explanation. A general government for the entire country at the top of the hierarchy, and governments at the provincial or regional level, such as provincial governments or state government, which is called federal government structure. So this is called as vertical division of power. So in the upcoming chapter, federalism in the political science, we look more into the federal structure of the government. Number three, power may also be shared among different social groups, such as the religious and linguistic groups. Community government in Belgium is a good example of this arrangement. This method is used to give minority communities a fair share in power. Number 4, power sharing arrangements can also be seen in the way political parties, pressure groups, and movements control or influence those in power. When two or more parties form an alliance to contest elections, and if they get elected, they form a coalition government and thus share power. So, coalition government is the best example for the fourth form of power sharing. Here are some examples of power sharing. Which of the four types of power sharing do these represent? And who is sharing power with whom? Let's go through these questions and let's check our progress related to types of power sharing. The Bombay High Court ordered the Maharashtra state government to immediately take action and improve living conditions for 2000 odd children at 7 children's homes in Mumbai. Here, the type of power sharing is power sharing between organs of government. This is horizontal power sharing. Here the power shared between judiciary and executive at the state Maharashtra. Number 2, the government of Ontario state in Canada has agreed to a land claim settlement with the Aboriginal community. The minister responsible for Native Affairs announced that the government will work with Aboriginal people in a spirit of mutual respect and cooperation. Here, type of power sharing is power is shared among different social groups. Here, the Canada government is sharing the power with the Aboriginal community. So, power sharing between different groups can be analyzed in this example. Russia's two influential political parties, the Union of Right Forces and the Liberal Yahoo movement, agreed to unite their organization into a strong right wing to form a coalition. They proposed to have a common list of candidates in the next election of the parliamentary elections of Russia. So the type of power sharing is here power shared between two political parties with mutual concern. Here the alliance formed between two political parties prior to the election. So here power is shared between two political parties is the quite right answer for this example. Example 4. The finance ministers of various states in Nigeria got together and demanded that the federal government declares its sources of income. They also wanted to know the formula by which the revenues distributed to various state governments. So here the central government is distributing the power with the state government. So obviously it is vertical power sharing, power shared among the governments of different level, which is called as federal system. So this federalism and federal system we learn more in the next chapter of the Democratic Politics 2 textbook. Uh, so this completes this chapter power sharing here. Thank you. Keep learning sharp.